In this video I'm gonna show you how I created this Viking battle scene from scratch in Blender. First of all, we need some reference images for the Vikings. I collected these from Google Images and Pinterest and then got started on the base mesh in Blender. When sculpting humans in Blender, I like to start with a cube guy and then keep subdividing that while adding details. This makes it so that we can go back and forth between higher and lower subdivisions and get a really refined result while still keeping the viewport responsive. So once I had the basic shape, I used my tablet and pen to sculpt it into this Viking dude and then baked all of the high resolution details to a normal map. Obviously we need some clothes for this guy, but worse than that, we need to have enough variety to sell the effect of multiple individual characters. So the idea here was to create some basic clothes and then layer different versions of additional clothes to create unique outfits. So I duplicated parts of the base mesh and then used a combination of cloth simulation and sculpting to create these clothing assets. In my night battle video, I created the chainmail by actually modeling the individual links and then using a separate mesh to drive the simulation. But in this project I knew that there would be lots of chainmail, so this just wouldn't be practical. Instead I had to figure out a way to create the effect of chainmail while still keeping the geometry really simple. So in a new blend file I created this array of links and then placed an orthographic camera looking down on it. Then I rendered it out as a PNG with transparent background, and this was our albedo or color texture. Then I could bring that texture onto my chainmail mesh and plug the transparency into the alpha channel. This brought us halfway to selling the effect, but it still looks really flat and it doesn't really interact with the light in a convincing manner. So back in the chainmail blend file I set my viewport to material preview and then changed it from combined to normal. Then I could viewport render this normal texture and bring that into my material as a normal map. This basically tells Blender to treat this flat plane as geometry with a depth in rendering, creating the illusion of the light bouncing off the individual links. Then I could just simulate this chainmail object as a normal cloth object and we had this result. Comparing this to the previous method, it definitely lacks that high definition detail, but at a little bit of a distance I think it sells the effect really well. I modeled some different helmets and went for a more realistic Viking helmet style rather than the classic horned helmets that you see in some media. I got so much backlash for the historical inaccuracy of my last battle scene, but look at me, I did some research this time. To bring it all together, I modeled some straps, buttons and hair, and then used a procedural system to add some unique dirt patterns to the Viking instances. At this point I was really happy with how the character models looked, so I went on to create some weapons. I want to take a quick moment to thank this video's sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is the largest online community for creatives, and there are thousands of really high quality classes on everything from filmmaking and 3D visual effects to music production, writing, and even business and career related topics. Don't get me wrong, learning on YouTube can be awesome, I do it all the time, but sometimes it's nice to be able to just sit down with a course that takes you exactly where you want to go. It's especially useful for us Blender users, since learning a new software this complicated can be really hard. And I remember starting out and not really knowing where to begin. Skillshare solves this issue with step-by-step courses and learning paths made by professionals in the area where you want to learn. Skillshare is right now giving away a free month of full access for absolutely free to the first 500 people to go through the link in the description. So now is a great time to get started. Claim that free month now, and then when you have time, check out this awesome learning path by Alden Peters to get a huge learning boost in Blender visual effects creation. Big thanks to Skillshare for bringing this video to you. I made this sword, this axe, this simple bow, and 2 different shield variations. Then I rigged the character in Mixamo and got into my Rococo motion capture suit and started recording all of the animations for the video. I made this one hero animation of me just fighting imaginary enemies and then recorded a bunch of random attack and hit reactions. Then in Blender I retargeted the animations to my rigged characters and used the NLA editor to retime and adjust the enemy animations to fit the hero animation. To get some interesting death animations, I used Cascador to simulate the enemies as ragdolls. Then to add some secondary motion to the animation of the characters, I simulated selected parts as cloth and used the base mesh underneath the cloth as a collision object. This really helped bring a lot of realism to the motion. Since the animated characters in and of themselves took up a bunch of performance and this scene was starting to slow down a lot, keeping the environment optimized was key. And this was ridiculously simple actually. I just brought in an HDRI from Polyhaven with some mountains in the background and then blended the scene using some fog. Combined with the shallow depth of field, it worked surprisingly well. The mist really helps bring the attention closer to the camera as well. To create the background soldiers for this main fight scene, I used a fun combination of techniques. The soldiers closest to the camera are actually low-res animated models. Soldiers one step away from that are 2D cards. So I placed a bunch of soldiers in an empty scene and rendered it from orthographic view like this. And then I just made the cards face the camera in the final scene, and as you can see, the illusion actually works pretty well. And it definitely saved a lot of processing power and still made the scene feel really densely populated. At this point I had already been working on this project for over 25 hours, and the temptation to cut the project short here and call it a day started setting in. But then I remembered my original vision with the archers firing in a volley, arrows hitting the shields, and the two sides charging at each other in a brutal battle, and that just reignited the spark to go that extra mile and create something that truly resembled my original vision. Sometimes you have to compromise and settle for less, and other times you just have to push, and this was a time to push. Animating a bunch of archers can be tricky because it requires a lot of work with constraints to get the string bending of the bow, and let's not forget the actual arrows firing. So I decided to animate it one time and then export it as an alembic file and switch up the timing to get some variation. Then it was just a matter of animating the arrows using a particle system, the hit reactions and the charge animation. At the end of the day, this extra work was well worth it to me because it made it feel more like a short film sequence and not just a one-shot fight scene. After doing some basic sound design and color grading, this was the final result.